Welcome back to the last episode of the hard-sided DIY roof camper build. In this episode, I will be laminating the carbon fiber panels, making the door panel as well as the window, finishing up the skylight, and then doing the weather seals and sort of finishing touches for the rest of the camper. I'm going to show you my pretty crude setup for how I'm going to create these laminated carbon fiber sheets. So I've got a tarp here taped down to the garage floor. I've got hardener, epoxy resin, scale, little bucket for the resin, and then I've got another foam smooth head for the roller, and then a like a fiberglass aluminum roller. So that's what I'll be using. I'm going to lay out first a layer of the epoxy in 3-to-1 ratios. It'll be about 60 ounces total. I've got the big roll of carbon fiber here. This was 65 yards. I've got 3 pieces cut up here. This is 60 inches by 8 feet. So we're going to go ahead and start laminating these foam panels. Going to put down 3 plies of carbon fiber on each side. I just finished laying up the carbon fiber. Did most of it off camera. I'm just going to cut off the edges like how I did on these panels, give this clean edge. So I'm doing this fixed floor panel as well as the roof, and then all the wall panels have to get the edges cut. So get back to you guys once I do that. So I just cleaned up both these edges of the front of the camper. Gonna weld on this piano hinge. Just like this, I've already gapped out the top and the bottom to allow space for the ceiling between each edge. So I'm just going to go like this. Get back to you guys once I do that. So we just tacked on the hinge, just on the corners, in the middle, and then both sides. So honestly, it works pretty good. I've got the window frame in place here. So it opens pretty smoothly. And there's not a whole lot of wiggle left and right, and that should firm up even more once I get it fully welded on, not just tacked together like how it is now. We just put down this weather stripping, so it's the same seal type, but on the bottom I'm doing the bulb facing inwards, and then on the top I'm doing the bulb facing outwards. So I'm going to do that all the way around on the top and bottom, and that way when they shut they'll sort of interlock and mesh together. So I'm back again with the camper mocked up here in the raised position, just trying to measure out where I want to put my gas struts. So I think I'm going to do 37 inches from the top in for the top mount, and then 81 inches from the side in for the bottom mount. Then that'll give me this position here. So probably weld these up and make sure it works. Got all my panels completed here. Got the sidewalls here. Got each component of the sidewall. So a top and a bottom for both sides, as well as the floor panels. These are the ones that are removable and can slide in various positions. I've got the top roof all laid up, and then the bottom fixed panel of the floor laid up and put in place. So the roof was sort of the first one I did, and that one was clearly doesn't look the best. It's got wrinkles all over. And then that sort of impacted the bottom as well, just because I used that fiberglass on the metal instead of the epoxy, where I was on the floor. And then the rest of the panels I just laid up right on top of the foam. As you can see, they turned out a lot better. Super flat. You can't really see a whole lot of those wrinkles and such. There's a couple, like on this one you can see a little bit. If I bring in really close and on camera it looks a little bit worse than it is. But the walls came out pretty good. All the walls came out pretty good, and I just laid up straight on top of the foam and the aluminum with some epoxy on top of the aluminum, and it came out a whole lot better than the roof. But you know, my mistakes are something I can learn from, and other people can see things to do and not to do. So I just sealed these corners between the carbon fiber on the top of the roof with some Sikaflex, which is just a pretty commonly used sealant for like RV applications. So I did around the whole edge, just where, you know, I thought would have some potential leaking points, and then as well as the sunroof, or the skylight section around all these edges. I think they're all watertight beforehand, just sort of an extra insurance. And I'm now actually going to make some carbon fiber Kevlar hinges. So this is some Kevlar bias tape, 2-inch tape, and then folded on top of itself to give about 1 inch, and then 2 plies of the Kevlar. So gonna saturate this with some urethane rubber resin, and then put some carbon tape on this side, and then epoxy it to the sides and the walls. So that'll be the new hinge system. Just finished curing. It's now pretty dry. It turned out pretty good, as you can see. It's not really wanting to separate, although there's a little bit of separation, which I think is actually sort of a good thing, but not so much that I'm concerned about it. It's got to hold the weight, but it's not stretching at all in this direction, just a little bit of stretch in this direction, and then it's easily folded, which is exactly what I was looking for. So I think this is going to work out pretty good. Just going to have a layer of carbon on this side, and then a layer of carbon on this side, and that's going to actually attach to my panel. So this is one of the finished hinges here. Turned out pretty good. You know, it's super flexible the way that, in the direction I wanted it, and it's still, the sides are still pretty rigid. So it turned out pretty good. I'm a little bit worried that the Kevlar is going to separate from the carbon, so I think I'm going to just VHB tape onto the frame of the tent for now, and then once I know that it's not going to fail in a couple months or so, then I'll go ahead and attach it more permanently with epoxy. But that's sort of my plan for now. So I'll probably get these attached to the wall panels and then attached to the camper. So these are the completed carbon Kevlar hinges. I went ahead and put some Gorilla Tape along the exposed Kevlar, attaching again the carbon to the Kevlar to the carbon, just as sort of a fail-safe. You know, I'm not super confident in these hinges, honestly. Just the way that I applied the urethane and then the epoxy on top of that. I'm not super confident, but I'm going to do the carbon Kevlar on one side using VHB tape, because again, I'm not super confident. And then on the other side, I'm going to use my plastic polypropylene hinge and see which one fails first. And then I'll permanently bond whichever one is more successful to both sides. Installing the hinges, I just went through and used this stainless steel brush on the polypropylene hinge. Just sort of rough up the surface, give me a better chance of adhering the VHB tape to the hinge. So I'm going to do VHB tape to the hinge and then put that onto the panel. And then I'll repeat that process for the hinge again and then onto the frame. So I've got both panels pretty much how they'll be when they're attached on the hinges. They'll actually be a little bit closer together, but this is looking pretty good. You can see this angle is pretty uniform. It's not 100% perfect, but I don't have a whole lot of wiggle room because I only used the 1/2 inch tubing for the frames of these wall panels, so I don't have a whole lot of wiggle room there. But I had this similar gap on this side and it meshes together pretty well, so I think this is a good gap I've got here. So I'm going to go ahead and put the hinges on this side as well. We just finished up installing all the panels, each individual component, and sort of the assemblies and sub-assemblies. So each wall panel has a hinge on it, and then that hinge attaches the wall panel to the frame, and they all hinge independently of each other, like this. Same with this side. I just put that side on, so I'm still sort of waiting for the tape to set up all the way. Again, the tape's not going to be permanent as far as like a multi-year, or like probably even multi-month solution. I'm going to test how they perform in an upcoming trip here pretty soon. But I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Next thing we'll move on to is building the door, as well as building the skylight. So I've already got the frame for that, and I've already got some dimensions I want for the door. So just be fabricating and then welding it onto a hinge here. We just finished welding the frame for the door panel here. So I've got 1x1 along all the edges, and then I've got another 1x1 along the bottom edge, and then 5 inches in on around the rest of the edges is another 1x1. Put sheet metal on the top, and then put foam within that. And then on the back, I'm actually going to use an EVA foam. I was thinking about using carbon on the front like I did for the rest of it. Just seemed like a little bit of a waste, considering all the aluminum in the frame, as far as like eliminating thermal bridging, which is my main goal with the majority of the camper. So I'm sort of sacrificing a little bit of thermal regulation throughout the front. So I just finished welding on the aluminum sheet onto the aluminum frame, and then I also just finished welding this inner frame, which the polycarbonate is going to sit along the edge and on top of, and then that's going to hinge up and down as sort of a door, like awning window sort of system. So I've got the camper jacked up right now on some jack stands and some wood back there. I'm going to go and weld on this piano hinge for the door panel. I'm done welding the door frame now. Got all the sheet metal tacked on how I want it. And then I just riveted on these slide spring bolts, or slide spring latches, and they just latch into the top of the frame here and lock in place for when you push it down, and then come up. So the panel's locked into the roof now, and everything's super solid. And then I also have one draw toggle that'll hold the roof down to the frame, just in case I have the struts disconnected and it's super windy. So I just cut out my polycarbonate skylight here. This is 3/16 polycarbonate, often called Lexan is like the common brand name. I cut it out with the circular saw with this fine tooth blade. It's actually an aluminum blade, but I cut it out with that. I was originally planning on bending the corners so that it was sort of in a sort of a cuboid shape, minus the bottom. But the heat gun I was using just wasn't. I think the polycarbonate is just way too thick to use it, so I'm gonna cut off the edges and then just glue them. It's not gonna look quite as seamless, but there's really not anything else I can do without making like a coil or purchasing a coil, which is just not worth it to me. So I'm gonna go and cut these and then just glue them and then create that sort of trapezoidal prism cuboid shape. So I've just cut up all these pieces for the skylight. like I said I was going to, I'm going to now put the rubber trim around this aluminum edge, this trim here. I'm drilling holes in this Skylight frame, and that's going to allow me some passive air, hopefully eliminate a little bit of positive pressure so I can have some exhausting air. So I'm going to drill holes, 1/4-inch holes around the entire frame, around the top, just underneath this gasket. So just finished up the Skylight here. It's not riveted to the roof or sealed to the roof yet, but the polycarbonate is riveted to the hinge, and the hinge is riveted to the inner frame. It's pretty rigid how it is, and then it just hinges up and down. Maybe in the long term I'll give it some longer arms so it can pivot further, but for now it's pretty good. I'm going to finish doing the same thing with the main door polycarbonate, riveting on the polycarbonate to the aluminum frame, and then hanging that onto the door panel here. So just finished up the door panel here with the window, or the window for the door panel. Opens pretty good. It's on this piano hinge, riveted to the window in the inner aluminum frame, and then welded onto the door panel. I'm going to be putting this boat decking, this sort of fake EVA foam boat decking, onto some of the portions of the camper, like the roof, and then the inside of the door, as well as the bottom frame rails. So I'm going to start with the roof and then go on to the frame rails. Just finished putting on the EVA foam on the interior of the roof here. It turned out pretty good. I need to do it in 2 different sections. You can sort of see the difference in color here. Overall, it looks pretty good, I think. It smoothed out a lot of the wrinkles and imperfections in the carbon. I'm going to do a brief walk around of the closed camper. So I've got the camper on the extrusion overland rack. It's sort of a modified XTR3 with a longer back portion and a shorter front portion here. And then I've got it overhanged over top of the up top overland alpha rack. So I can still fit my Roam case up here with it open and the camper open. I've got some tie down points on each corner here to pick it up, to put it into my ceiling hoist. I want to cover how I'm mounting the camper to the extrusion overland rack. I'm using their roof tent mounting plates. They're just L brackets with 2 mounting holes for the frame side and 1 hole for the roof tent or camper side. I've got 6 5/16 bolts through bolted through the frame, 3 on this side, 3 on the other side. So I've got a riv nut on the bottom side, and the top side is just a nut or a flange bolt that just clamps down the camper to the bed rack. I wanted to demonstrate the opening and closing of the camper, as well as some other systems and operations of the camper. I want to go over some of the things I did off camera to make this camper complete and sort of fully functional before optimization and sort of quality of life things are added. But I'm pretty happy with its current position now. So I've added these seals on the front. I've got a basic EPDM seal around the entire edge, and then this additional EPDM bulb seal around the edge to further seal the door when it's closed. I added these nylon handles on either side, just sort of help get up to sort of a position to walk into the camper or hop into the camper. And then I had these bulb seals on the sides of the door panel, and I was originally going to have a second bulb seal on this sort of wall panel side, but the bulb seal I had wasn't really the right durometer, so it was not letting the door pass through, or the walls pass through the door panel. So right now it's just like the marine grade ultra durable Gorilla Tape, which is actually working pretty well. But I'll be replacing this section of the wall with something more made for the purpose, similar to what I was using beforehand, just with a different durometer, so they can easily pass through the door panel on either side like it was intended to do. And then this entire strip on either side has a wiper seal, and that's just to keep water from coming into the tent between this very small gap between the wall panels. And then I added these latches. These latches are pretty typical barrel latches, and they just latch right into these holes here. I added these Jeep hood latches, which I used on the original tent, which was inspired by ripcord. Honestly, a lot of this build, just sort of the overall wanting to sort of film this and have an instruction video for others to use, was inspired by ripcord. Even though this tent itself isn't inspired by ripcord, just sort of the process in general, and a couple things I brought over from my original tent that was, a lot of his information he provided. So I want to give a shout out to him just for sort of inspiring me to do this, and the original design that led me to designing this rigid tent. So finally, I added these flush mounted latches, typically used for boats, for panels that need to be water resistant or at least watertight. And then these just latch into a slot I made in the frame for the door. So latch right in and keep everything secure. And this panel is pretty rigid now that they're latched in. So now that we're open, a couple things. First of all, this foam I used is the back. It's definitely not as good as I was expecting or hoping for, so I have to use some sort of different adhesive to adhere this onto the roof. That's sort of been an ongoing problem I've seen since I've finished assembling and over the last day. So the walls then just clip in to the door frame here. Doing it one-handed. Here we go. Same thing with the top. So now these are clipped into the door. Still have to do this front here. I decided to wait on it after I saw that this adhesive back foam is sort of failing on me. So I'd like to do a more permanent solution on this side here. But this will also get a foam interior similar to the roof here. But moving back to the walls, so I've got them latched into place into the door panel and then locked in. And now at this point, they're extremely rigid. Can even be leaned against. And then a full size or approximately a double size mattress will fit inside here. Once the camper's open and the door panel is latched into the roof on both points, as well as that toggle latch being engaged, then these struts can now be opened. So these are in a quick release system, and they just transfer up to these secondary ball studs. So these are just in the storage position, and now from here these wall panels can now open up, giving you full, you know, sort of almost 360-degree viewing of where you're camping at. And this can be done for both sides. So then from here we can just come back and latch these back into place, just like so, and now they're back stable. And you can have either one of these open or closed, or both open or both closed. So that's sort of the system that I've patented and developed here. But having the ability to be able to fully open this camper in ideal weather, where, you know, in the middle of the day or when the weather's nice and there's no bugs around, just being able to fully open this camper and being able to fully take in their surroundings while still having, you know, some aerial vantage, as well as, you know, some safety from the ground and bugs and whatnot beneath you. So now further we can open up this sunroof. Just push on both sides here, and it opens right up. And then closing the skylight is just as easy. Just pull forward and down on the skylight. So now while I'm leaned up against this wall that's in the fixed position on this side, you can sort of see the potential of being able to open these panels on the sides. You know, you have this entire section that's fully open to enjoy the environment you're in, while still having a place to sit and relax that's not on the ground in the dirt or whatever. So this can be done on either side, this opening the panels, but this is probably an ideal situation, having this wall to lean on. So closing up the camper is really just as easy. It's just doing everything in reverse. So closing up the door panel, opening up the rigid walls, or unlatching them, and then relatching the struts on either side back into that you know, folding upright and closed down position. So I'm gonna go and close this door panel. Sort of a temporary solution I have for now, just to keep these wall panels together if I'm alone. So just come like this, wrap this bungee around. So as you can see, I get the camper closed and open in about 30 or 40 seconds, even with sort of fumbling around with that bungee cord. So I'd say it's a huge improvement over the last one, and really just, you know, campers and or rooftop tents or campers in general, being able to open and close those things as quick as possible to not waste your time, you know, in that sort of stage of setting up and taking down, just be able to enjoy your camping trip or your overland trip or whatnot. So one more thing I want to cover was the actual weight of the camper. This is 165 pounds. That includes the latches, the skylight, the window, door panels, all that stuff, the interior foam. I think that's the lightest hard-walled camper there is now. I really hope this sort of pushes competition among you know, camper developers and whatnot. Make this sort of an accessible area and space for other people to get into hard-sided campers. Hard-sided roof campers, just because I think it's such a versatile system, sort of expanding upon the roof tent space that we have now. So this is the last video in the DIY hard-sided roof camper build series I'll be doing. You'll definitely be seeing more videos about this camper as far as problems and solutions, as well as more detailed instructions about, you know, CAD models and estimated costs and whatnot, things like that. But I really appreciate if you subscribe and leave a comment and like this video. This camper's taken a lot of time and money and you know, design work that's gone into it as far as creating this patented system, and with all the information I'm sharing so you can build your own. So I'd really appreciate that. and stay tuned for the next one.